I'm delighted to be here to moderate this panel, and just to make sure you are all in the right room, we are here to talk about digital public infrastructure. We have an amazing panel of 6 here with us today. So I'd like to start by introducing Arvind Gupta, who is the head of and co-founder of the Digital India Foundation. Arvind, could you come and sit over here? I've been told you have to sit next to me.
Okay.
Yep.
Keep everybody in control.
Hayk Voskanyan, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Inecobank in Armenia. Please. Hayk Yesayan, who is the Executive Director of Team Telecom, Republic of Armenia. Marianna Marcucci, Vice Chair of All India Belgium. Basant Hasib, who is an Assistant Professor of Political Science at the European Universities in Egypt. And Laura Larocchia, who is Manager of DeSalle Consulting in Italy. And apologies for my names, but anyway, we'll get through it. Everyone have a seat. Okay, so to kick things off today, I'd just like to take you all back to Rasina Dialogue in 2022. So a few years ago now. And I remember this very, very lively debate between I was moderating a very similar panel on what we just called digital technology at the time, with my colleague and friend Sharad Sharma on India's digital public infrastructure in particular, and where it stood globally in terms of DPIs. And there was a very big, very heated debate. And the questions were around how you define them. DPIs, it wasn't the buzzword that it is today. Not that it's just a buzzword; it's very important. But this was very, very new. And I don't think many of us could really wrap our heads around what India had achieved through its digital public infrastructure. And now fast forward to, 2.5 years later, and I think we can firmly say that India has really been a global leader in this space. And the trend we see, is India's DPIs emerging in other parts of the world as well. But despite where we've got to, and I know that Arvind can give us a lot more context around this, there is still a whole range of issues around DPIs that are absolutely worth our time and energy. Things around the underlying ideology and philosophical, standpoint of, for lack of a better phrase, of what DPIs are and what they should be there to do. There are questions around security, around sovereignty. There are commercial questions, particularly in a country like Australia, where the notion of DPIs is just not something that's in our vernacular and commercial understanding. And what happens in a country like India where 1.3 billion people are using DPIs, and all of a sudden that becomes a commercial opportunity. So there are a whole bunch of challenges and things that we can debate here today. And with that, I'd like to start by asking our amazing panelists to give their perspective from their country or their region on where they're at with DPIs. What is the position we're at in each of your countries? So I'll pass first to Arvind, and we'll go around panelist by panelist.
Great. Thank you, Erin. It's always a pleasure to discuss with you on this very important topic of digital public infrastructure. So to be very frank, when we first talked about this whole concept of digital public infrastructure, it was actually at one of the Rasina dialogues. And I asked by a raise of hands how many people knew what DPI stood for within India. This is in India. Maybe 2% of the room could identify with it. And I don't blame any of the 98% who don't, because it's very new. 2022, we were still debating what DPI is. And as a practitioner, as a researcher, as a professor, I can tell you, if you get the academic community involved, it would have taken years more to define what DPI stands for, what should be the definition and the semantics of DPI. Thankfully, in 2022, a community of practice has agreed what digital public infrastructure today is. And as I say, thankfully, because now we at least know what is digital public infrastructure. And so I'm going to ask the same question in this room. How many of you know what digital public infrastructure is? If not, that's okay.
Okay, I think we need to go back to the beginning, actually.
Yes. If not, that's okay, because I want to be sure that what we are communicating is understandable and not just talking as a PhD level, but if we have to come down at a bachelor's level, we are happy to do that. Now, the word public infrastructure is very commonly known. The road outside is public infrastructure, right? It was always identified with power grids, with waterways, with railroads, with highways, but never with digital technology. Even though for some of us who have been part of digital public infrastructure when it really started, you think about the internet. In the late 80s and the early 90s, and I'm aging myself, we actually built what is today's internet, the TCP/IP, as a public good. It is a public infrastructure that everybody could use. But then, and that was the early days of the internet, but then afterwards, because everything was built on top of it by private companies and private platforms, we somewhere lost the whole understanding of what is digital public infrastructure. So let's go, a very easy way to understand is digital public infrastructure is non-rent seeking technology backbone. Non-rent seeking, it's not free, non-rent seeking, open and interoperable, which solves problems for multiple people in the society, the government, the businesses, academia, and startups. And it's open architecture, it's interoperable. It's a very simple way of looking at it. That's what the internet was. There was networking before the internet. And I know a lot of people from Armenia and the Bay Area with me who are working on solving those problems. We all used to work on systems which are not interoperable, the IBM systems, the Novell systems, and others. Eric Schmidt, who was later on with Google, was the head of Novell, by the way, before that. So those were closed systems. But today, the internet changed everything. DPI is similarly bound to change everything. Now, after so many years, when India started working on this approach, the first few attempts at building digital public infrastructure was by the government, but later on became government and citizen partnership, private and public partnership. So DPI is definitely not a government system, a government services system. Government services are built on top of it, but it's the core systems on which you build other things, and all sections of the society can build their own systems, their own applications on top of it, number one. Two, it has to be sustainable. It has to be interoperable. So it has to be non-rent seeking. That's a very important way to understand it. Non-rent seeking means it can collect a little bit of fees, services cost, to recover its own management, application, technology cost, infrastructure cost, but not beyond a certain point. And I'll give you some examples of DPI so you'll understand. In India, which Arvind talked about, we have this core DPI started with identity, giving every single Indian an identity, a unique identity, which is digitally verifiable. Two, a payment system, which is open, interoperable. So, I've been moving around Armenia. Over here, a payment system, when you pay by credit cards or debit cards, there are 3 or 4 systems, right? You have, what are the payment systems more prevalent here? Anybody? You can take out your cards and you can see some logos there. Visa. What else? MasterCard. What else? Which is Armenian. Are they public infrastructure or private companies?
It's, I think, public. It's owned by our banks. Maybe Hayk could explain more.
So that you have an example of a semi-DPI, I would call it. But Visa and MasterCard are definitely not. I'm just giving an example. They are a profit-seeking entity. They make money. Nothing wrong in that. But India took an approach in building a payment system where the core system was non-rent seeking. Everybody could use it. It was interoperable. So all banks in India and almost 500 million people in India every day make a payment which does not cost anything to the shopkeeper or the consumer, both sides, zero cost. But it is still sustainable because for high value payments, everybody pays a little amount, very small amount, and that is enough at the volume of transactions for it to make money and sustain its infrastructure. So payments, identity, but it core, and Erin will give me one more minute. I know she's seeing the watch. There's something called the India stack. It's an interoperable layer of technology which starts with identity. Everybody has a digital identity. Then you make payments on top of it, and you can now use the combination of the two to solve many problems. And I know we have people from the telecom companies here. They have to every year or every 2 years, as per policy, do a KYC check, know your customer check, and that is very expensive if you submit papers and address proofs and others. In India, you just do it digitally using your biometrics, and that solves for the telecom companies' problem by bringing the cost down. What is the case? In India, 2014, we had 200 million people at the internet, joining the internet. Today, we have 900 million people on the internet. 900 million. At the lowest cost of data in the world. We have one person sitting in this room who has been part of that revolution. Mr. Bansal over here is smiling. India today gives the cheapest internet to everybody in India because we have a very low cost of managing that infrastructure. KYC is one part of it. So it solves for everybody. And I'll comment on many other things when the time comes. So DPI, basic examples are, a good example is India. 1.35 billion people use it. And what it is as a definition is what I explained to you. So for now.
Very helpful, thank you. And thank you for identifying that we actually needed to explain what DPIs are to everyone in the room, which is fine. Hayk.
So, yeah, thank you for this great definition of DPI. I have nothing to add there. If you allow me, I can just provide brief information about where Armenia stands for, and Hayk also will continue from his part. Yeah, of course, you mentioned the payment system. Yeah, we have ARCA system, which is the centralized processing, which is very similar to what Visa and ARCA does. Not a rent seeking. I'm curious whether this rent seeking is very important part of it, because you can be profitable and still serve your purpose if you have time. If we have time, I would like to hear back on that. So we have ID card system, but electronic identification is lacking scale here. That is why we team up with the help of the government. I mean, with the nudge from the government, we team up with banks and telecom companies teamed up to create this, revitalize the electronic ID system, which will have which will be the certificate authority here. Yeah, and in terms of what we stand, it is fragmented, unfortunately, in Armenia yet, but we are working on it, and the government is working on it also. It was the most easy way to make people to use digital technologies is banking, because they are every day in it, and they have very quick feedback on when they are using it. So I believe that this is a very good base for convincing people and breaking cultural boundaries and to use digital infrastructure and technology. That's all for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Hayk and Arvind. I will add a little bit. When you are saying DPI, as telecom, we are not saying deep, we are saying deep packet inspection DPI. It's a different. But now we are talking about DPI and digital public infrastructure. Main key for digital public infrastructure is network. If you don't have good network connectivity, broadband connectivity in the country, you cannot build good digital public infrastructure. As you said, it's most probably giving to share the active and passive infrastructure, which is giving synergies on the prices, and you can give better services with a low cost. This is the main key of DPI, which is going forward everywhere in the world. And for Armenia is unique. It's a very small country, and to build something, it's very easier than such in India or other big countries, and the country is very progressive. And right now we are implementing, as Hayk mentioned, the mobile ID, which will give us within 2 years, hopefully, the main population of the country will have authorization with the mobile. It means you can, in an application layer, you can authorize everything. And with the network, we are very quite good. Like in a whole country, 98% of populated area is covered with the 4G. I think with till 2025, April, May, 85% of populated areas will be covered with 5G. And with the network, what we have and other telecoms have, you can connect with the fiber everywhere, with every connectivity. We just right now need to collaborate all local vendors to use our infrastructures and our digital signature things, what we are doing. Hopefully within 2 years, we will see the real changes on DPI in the country. And when we as a country and the government and public companies build this infrastructure, I can say very easily every unique service provider can integrate with these services and to build very fast banking, transaction, any APIs can work. It's a giving opportunity to grow from the small Soho companies like startups to grow up to the big ones. I think Armenia is unique on this part. Maybe think this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. As my organization, All Digital, is working on digital skills, we prefer to approach the DPIs under a human aspect, like human-like. So, because the promise of the DPIs are undeniable, but if we discuss DPIs, it means nothing if we don't consider the real targets, the real goal of the DPIs. So we want to, we work in this direction, and technology and digital and DPIs in general should be an integration and not a substitution, for humans. So we have identified 5 main aspects we are working on, and we are trying to achieve to let even all the more marginalized group of people have access. Because if technology is the goal, technology has no means of existing, okay? And especially, obviously not in Armenia, in India, in your countries, but sometimes when we are speaking to the public, technology is the goal. So we have to do that. But we don't know for whom we're doing that, okay? So briefly, I know that you were talking about regulation, so I'm not, I just have a 2 hours talk here for you to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. But I could. So inclusion for us is paramount, okay? So equitable access to DPIs means nothing if we are not involving marginalized group of people, marginalized communities, vulnerable groups, and we must bridge the digital divide, because many of these groups don't have any idea, not even what DPI is, but how to access, the digital. So, continuing on this path, digital literacy is key. All Digital, our organization is a network of more than 25,000 digital competence centers, and we work closely with, a local and international level, EU obviously, but also abroad, to ensure that every group of people have the same level of skills. And this means not equality, but equity. And it is a very important differentiation. And obviously, continuing on this, we have to protect the marginalized people when using the internet. So cybersecurity is one of our main concerns when we talk about DPIs, because many of these people, on one hand, don't know how to use them, but they are vulnerable, in being, attacked, obviously, from the outside. And I wish to talk about also like common collaboration and common standards in doing that. But I want you to speak before about the introduction, and I would like also after to talk about the frameworks with which we work to ensure equality and inclusion.
Thank you, Erin, for the introduction, and thank you to my colleagues who gave like their own perspective on DPIs. I will talk about my own perspective on DPI and Egypt's perspective on DPI, and I will talk about two things with regards to DPI. First, we see DPI as a tool or an enabler to achieve digitalization, and thus it helps the states to accelerate their achievements of all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is a common definition of all countries. And as Arvind said, that the main definition of DPI is a set of systems that is secure, interoperable, and also inclusive, as Marianna mentioned, and it provides equal access for everyone on an equal level, and it also should be publicly accountable. And DPIs, it's not a new concept. However, it gained a lot of momentum with India's presidency of the G20 of 2023. And here we can see like the snowball effect or the domino effect that happened, that everyone was inspired by this and everyone wanted to improve their DPI somehow. What I want to add here to my colleagues is that I want to say that in Egypt, we identify four main pillars or four main dimensions of DPI. First, we have the regulatory layer or the regulatory framework. What are the laws? What is the enforcement mechanism? What are the policies and strategies? This is number one. Number two, we have the technology and security layer, as you mentioned. What is the technology and innovation used? How secure it is for the users, for the society? Is it safe for them to use it? And here we're talking about the cybersecurity aspect. And how states are ready, the level of readiness, the capacity they have, the capacity building technology skills that they built in order to have an effective deployment of technology and in order to have this kind of secure technology. And then we have the multi-stakeholder governance process. You have to include everyone in the process of governing DPIs. You have to have public-private partnerships. You have to include the civil society organizations to ensure the human rights aspect of the implications of DPIs. And you have to have this kind of cooperation on the national and international and also bilateral and multilateral levels. The fourth layer is the human-centric layer, as Marianna said. How is DPI helping people? Is it inclusive to everyone or not? Is it inclusive to the vulnerable groups, to the marginalized groups, from women, from the youth, from the people with disabilities or not? How does it impact them? Are the policies and the regulations of DPI is inclusive to those people as well when you put regulations and policies that are governing DPIs or not? So these four pillars that we use, they set the foreground of what we call the best practices of adopting DPIs, and also they set or they identify the main challenges or the main concerns when we talk about DPIs on these four levels, and also they set they lay the ground for international cooperation based on these four levels. The second thing that I want to add is a political aspect of DPI. Well, DPI, we see it as a tool or a driver of diplomacy between states. It deepens cooperation on the level of state to state and on the level of states and private companies. For the states, of course, it's because obviously they want to have access to the technological know-how, they want to have access to trainings, they want to exchange best practices, and for the companies because of obviously for the commercial benefit. And here we see that the digital aspects or the different aspects of digital infrastructure, they are interdependent. So one cooperation on one aspect of digital infrastructure will automatically lead to cooperation on a different aspect of digital infrastructure. And here we can say there is a snowball or a domino effect or the spillover effect of cooperation. One form of cooperation will lead to the other because of the interconnectivity of the digital aspects of the digital infrastructure. For example, when we have, for example, cloud computing data centers, they will require the resilient connectivity, and they require cybersecurity to have protection of the big data. And thus, they will reinforce states to share the internet connectivity infrastructure, number one, and they will have cooperation on the cybersecurity level. Also, connectivity itself, data cables, they will require resilient connections, and therefore states will cooperate to provide this kind of security on this level. And I will stop here.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Erin, for your introduction. And it was a really an honor to me to be participating to these debates about DPI. It's really critical, especially in my country. So for me, it's really critical to the development of Italy and of Europe too. We often talk about digitalization as a force of leap forward, especially in the developed countries, and expecting they are always super digitalized. But actually, this digitalization process could actually risk to make a leap backward if people can't really know how to use these tools. And so we would like to share three challenges of Italy, of Europe in general, and maybe then we can have the opportunity to talk about solution that we adopt as a country, even as a company for who I work, and even for a no-profit with the Global Shapers community World Economic Forum with who I collaborate. And so the first challenge is, of course, connectivity, especially in remote areas. I mean that especially in a country when with diverse geographical landscape, imagine with a mountain region or islands, something, and so on and so forth. Connectivity is not for every place, and sometimes it's limited, and sometimes it's entirely absent. And this digital divide creates a really significant barrier to the use of digital tools to participate to the everyday life. And in fact, according to the DESI, the Digital Economic and Society Index, Italy is at 18 out of 27 countries. So we have really a lot to do about this. And then the second challenge is digital literacy. I mean, it's not enough to simply provide infrastructure and provide digital tools if people don't know how to use them effectively. So in Italy, for example, only 42 Italians between 16 and 75 years old have at least basic digital skills. In Europe, it's 54%, but it's not an impressive number too. And the point is that this not affects only individuals, but even business, especially small and medium business, that for a country like Italy is really the backbone of our economy. And at the end, at least, last but not least, the cultural trust. I mean that I'm in many countries, in Italy too, and I can see some of you that say yes. There is a general hesitation about using these tools, and particularly when people interact with public service, and is something that's concerned about privacy, security. Something concerned about privacy, security, and mistrust of the institution. And so people sometimes prefer to do things in a traditional way by doing things paper-based, processed by face-to-face interaction. So we have to change even this, because if we have for digital tools, but people not trust these tools, is a problem, and is not effective in the society. So this is the three challenges: connectivity, and digital literacy, and cultural trust.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Laura. I think listening to all of you talk, just to kind of wrap that together and then to go on to some more questions, sitting from the position of a country like Australia, DPIs are not even part of the conversation. There's no dialogue about DPIs and why. And I guess perhaps similar to some other European countries where you have well-developed, say, payment systems. You have identity systems. They're not digital, but you have great ID systems, for example. The need for DPIs has not been there. So if you look at the India example again, 12 years ago when I first went to India, I'd go down to Select City Walk with my ATM card and I'd take out tens of thousands of rupees to pay for things along the way. People don't use money in the same way. So back then, people, it was 2016 when Modi demonetized. Everybody went on to the Aadhaar system because they didn't have cash anymore. Then everybody started to use UPI. So that you have 1.3 billion people who are on Aadhaar, and 68% of transactions are UPI in India now. So the inclusion element, that the amount of people that brought into the economy that just weren't there before is phenomenal. Like the scale is just enormous. Whereas in a country like Australia, everybody's using their bank card anyway. It's not an inclusion conversation. And so I find this really interesting, some of the issues you mentioned around trust and so on and so forth. Whereas if the alternate is not having that economic inclusion, you're more likely to bring an entire society onto that system. But what I do find interesting about the India example, and one of the opportunities that are there, is taking the DPIs international. So now you have this really sophisticated system that other countries are looking to collaborate on, Armenia, Egypt and others. But there's also the movement of people, there's the movement of money around the world. Singapore now has UPI, the UAE now has UPI for non-resident Indians, NRIs only, because you have to be on Aadhaar. But what is the potential there for that international cooperation, unlocking the Indian economy and those sorts of things that even a country like Australia can be looking at?
Yeah, I think, Erin, you explain the context very well because you come from Australia, and I can empathize because when developed countries are entrenched, they have lesser problems. India had a lot of problems, and we had to solve for them. So we had to solve for it ourselves rather than looking outside. Because what everybody on this panel has said is one common theme, at least, was trust and inclusion. Let me just comment on that. On digital inclusion, I did give this comment. In 2014, we had 200 million people on mobile internet. Today, we have 900 million people on mobile internet in India. 700 new people added to the internet. That's inclusion. At the lowest cost of internet in the world. That's inclusion. 2, the biggest, and again, in Armenian context, it looks like a very big number, but India, 500 million people in India didn't have access to banking. Now, 531 million new bank account holders have been opened in India because of DPI. That's inclusion. 531 million is 2.5 times the working population of America. That's been opened in 5 years. Now, why I'm giving this example is because this is very inclusive. Now, if you have a population which is already 100% banked, you don't look at it. We had to look at it because we had no other choice. DPIs, in my opinion, are the most bottom-up technology ever built. They don't exclude anybody. They start from the bottom, including the bottom of the pyramid first. And that is a change in approach of thinking about technology. How big tech, how big companies, they look at the top of the pyramid, they start addressing those, the rich, the super rich, the middle income, and then they come down the pyramid. DPIs are the other way around. They look at, if you can solve for the bottom of the pyramid, you can solve for everybody else. So the examples I'm giving are that. 2, everybody, Laura talked about trust, and I think that's a very important conversation. Trust and technology. Who do you trust? How do you trust? And Basant from Egypt gave this whole 4-layered architecture, which is absolutely brilliant. And to just explain to you, trust comes because there is technical trust, there's governance trust, there is regulatory trust, and then there is trust from the market. When a technology is used by all sections of the society, Erin is talking about UPI. UPI stands for Unified Payments Interface. It's a common payment system in India today. By the way, half a billion transactions get done every day on UPI. Every day. Okay. From as little as 1 gram, maybe 4 grams. That's the lowest anything you can buy in India now for. And to 10,000, 20,000 grams in Indian rupees. It's phenomenal. Everybody just accepts this QR code and it's interoperable. You don't need to be on that bank account or that system. You can be across the systems. And in fact, the joke in India is if you're paying by cash, you're a non-resident Indian. Because everybody else pays by UPI.
Like me with my cash at the ATM.
Everybody pays by UPI. This change has happened because of policies, certain things like demonetization, push towards digital banking, and many other things. But the trust comes in because everybody's using it. So it's a market trust, regulatory trust, technology trust, and of course a governance trust. And the shared trust that you create value. All the beautiful thing is, I gave an example of one telecom company which has really started in the DPI era only. It was not a pre-DPI era offering. They benefited from it. All the other telecoms came in and started using the same method of customer onboarding. Banks, they never used to, the cost of banking was so high because they didn't use DPIs. Today, every bank uses DPI. You can open a bank account in India in 55 seconds today. Let's give it 2 minutes at the worst because of internet connectivity. So this is a very inclusive thing. It's very open. And that's the reason I say that sometimes developed countries, and there is one more thing that is a big elephant always in the room. The developed countries have entrenched systems which create headwinds. And I can tell you very clearly, when they are entrenched players, you are going to disrupt them by using digital public infrastructure. They have their own vested interest. They create those headwinds. And I'm very vocal about it. So, when the government and public-private partnership changes the systems and says you start using this, and these companies get disrupted, you have a challenge. But in the long run, everybody understands the value it creates to society. In India, we have 110 unicorns. I know in Armenia, there are about 3 or 4 unicorn companies. And that's very high, by the way, per capita. So I must congratulate you for that. But we have 110, 120 unicorns. Out of that, 100 are dependent on India's DPIs. They wouldn't be there if there was no DPI. So there's startup value that has been created over $500 billion. So there is value for everybody. And I think this whole narrative, and last point, and I'm going to leave it there, why the government benefits. Because, of course, there's formalization of economy. Everybody is paying in an auditable digital manner. But when we give out benefits and welfare, so if anybody from the government, you have to understand, this has a deep impact on the political economy. When we give out benefits today, it goes to the intended targeted recipient. It does not go to fake people. It does not. It is a unique identity, ensures that the money goes to people who deserve that money. Right. And that is why what World Bank used to say, 85% of the $100 that was disbursed was lost. Today, there is zero loss. The World Bank has come back and said DPIs are important for the political economy, for benefit system, for welfare, because no money is lost in translation. The money that you transfer from the central repository goes to each individual's bank account. Those are beneficiaries of that.
Move on from you, Arvind, although you made a very good point about the G2P payments. Marianna has her light on.
Yes, thanks. I'm half French and half Italian, so complaining and critics are in my DNA. So, No, I just want to a small comment on what you said about inclusion. Congratulations for the numbers, obviously, of your country. We obviously, unfortunately, as Laura said, can't say the same for Italy or Belgium or Europe. Inclusion, in my opinion, is not just giving access to everybody, to technology or to digital, but it's above all ensuring that all the people have understand of what they are doing. I mentioned cybersecurity before. but not mentioning hate speech and scamming and, you know, cyberbullying. And you know that the internet that we surf every day is only the 4% of the real internet. You know, there's the dark web and the deep web. So I think that, and I'm looking at the bank, my fellow panelists in banking now, we have to fund the organizations, you know, and you know, public activities, but NGOs also, to ensure digital literacy and to ensure the access to you know, the upgrading to digital skills and to digital competencies, to ensure that this huge number of people that have access to the digital public infrastructures actually knows how to defend other people and to defend themselves, because it's not just a matter of quantity, but it's a matter of quality of the access, you know. So yeah, just that.
We do have to make some times for questions, but I do want to ask Hayk and Hayk one more point. My gosh, I can't get my words out today. So, you know, there's a spectrum, right? You have digital public infrastructure in the purest, you know, the way that India approaches it. I always sort of joke about Australia. We don't have digital public infrastructure. We have digital private infrastructure. So the government comes up with an idea and PwC implements it, and gets the commercial benefit from it. It sounds to me like Armenia sits somewhere in the middle, perhaps. So I'd like to pass to you both for your final comments before we open up the floor for questions. What are those opportunities that you see for Armenia here with DPIs, and how can countries like yours, where they're perhaps in the middle here, really benefit from DPIs?
Yeah, thank you, Erin. You made my point. We're in between India and Australia. More maybe towards Australia. Why I'm saying, because I can say that we don't have that kind of problem of inclusion, because bankable, I mean, population who are within the banking system is very high. The percentages may go up to 90%. So we don't need to have DPI to enable them to enter into the public, into the banking system or use digital services. But we have different motivation here. As a small country, we have to have a very, very efficient economy. Very efficient economy means higher productivity, and we have to have frictionless services provision by the government to the businesses, by the businesses to the customers. So G2B, G2C, and all the combinations together. So as a bank, we have most loved mobile banking application in the country, I can say. A couple of minutes of PR. But still, we do a lot of things ourselves. Of course, it's not efficient for us also to invest in face recognition technology, all this small, but of course costly development. We have to concentrate on best service to our customer, which will be a good new products, which will be why not? We will not go anyway out of face-to-face interaction, because it's something that is still needed. So productivity is very, 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 very good, and banks are standing in the middle of everything, because we will benefit from all sides. So we will know a lot of information about our customers. There will be less risky for us. We will give credit to them. The same for businesses. Businesses will go out of the gray area and go into the kind of more. So there will be no shadow economy, or less shadow economy, which will provide a lot of also comfort for us to lend them. And also all the processes that were included as a bank and as a banking system. That's the other one will go interaction with courts, property, something related to property management, property rights, and all this kind of things. And so motivation. Our motivation as a small country, again, is about higher productivity, which is very important for us to provide a good services. And why not the experts? And one thing on the remark related to international going international, for example, in case of UPI, unfortunately, currently after the Ukrainian situation, we have bad and not more friction on the international payments, cross-border payments, which is because of sanctions. So here, all alternative, maybe between countries, between two countries or three countries or whatever it is. The new payment systems cross-border, of course, will help not to depend on single system and have more opportunity in this fragmented situation, and which will come to both equity, both inclusion, because the bigger the trade, the higher the inclusion. And trade without good and frictionless cross-border payments, it's impossible. Yeah, so yeah, that's all. And on the regulation, one thing that we are lacking, and I know that we'll touch the regulation issue also. Of course, it's very important to have regulated the security part of the DPI. But most important regulation which is enabling the use of DPI by all participants in the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Hayk. Do you want to add something as well? And just make sure you've got your questions going in your head, because we will go to them next.
Thank you, Hayk. I will add a little bit more regarding connectivity and application layer. In our country, smartphone penetration is more than 85%. It means every people can access to every application on Android or iOS. And also regarding security, as a small country, it was very easy to do it more secure from outside cyber attacks. Maybe we need to more collaborate with the people to understand them that also internet and intranet are different things, because as a country we can also use our DPI as an intranet, and with gateways we can close and more secure to be for like it cannot do as India, because their traffics are huge, and to deep packet analysis inspection it's not easy than we can do as a country in Armenia. It means we can more have secure processing, because our figures it's not that much high than in India, in US or big European countries. It's giving good opportunity to us to be more flexible and more cheaper, have better security. Regarding technological aspect, I think this is the key points, that we have good penetration of application layer, access to our humans to have access, and more be secure as small country, because the mobile penetration, we have 2.9 million population, but mobile penetration is 3.6 million. And the average payment of mobile data access is around 1,400 drams. It means $3.50. It's also cheap, and the connectivity quality is, I think we are good on it, and access is everywhere. I think when you have this opportunity and you have 17 banks, also the mobile payment systems, I think quite good developed, and banking sector also is quite regulated on this field. Also telecom is also quite regulated. We have PSRC, which is regulating our sector, and within the last 20 years on telecom sector we have good growth. I think for DPIs only what we need to create good data centers in the country. One or two we have, but we have to work on it more, and also geo-redundancy thing, because Armenia is small, we have to understand what we are doing only in Armenia, or we have to use other countries for data privacy use. I think this point what I will mention.
Thanks, Hayk. I'm taking the liberty of starting late to try and get a couple of questions in. Did we have any questions from the floor? Yeah, I think this is the microphone that's supposed to go. Oh no, one's coming up from the back. Thank you. If you just want to say your name and what organization you're from first, that would be great.
I'm just participant. My name is Gohar. Question to Arvind about the DPI. Thank you for sharing the vision and Indian case for here. My question is about artificial intelligence and the infrastructure for AI, because you mentioned about the unicorns, startup that are using the DPIs, and maybe it is too early to ask this question, but what about infrastructure for AI, and will it cover also kind of GPUs or computational power that the current startups are struggling with? Thank you.
Should I?
Yeah. Actually, if there's enough, what we might do is a round of questions and answer that way. We've got two down the front here as well. Do you? You're both well articulated. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The mic is here now. Yeah.
I was just really curious. The point around digital literacy, I think, cannot be understated. So I'm curious to hear what it is you think we should be doing in order to really support and bolster that internationally.
Thank you very much. I'm Guadalupe. I'm from Argentina. I'm from Universidad Torcuato Di Tella. I direct a master's in public policy there. I'm very interested in knowing how you're better targeting your social systems once DPI is in place, the figures you mentioned. But mainly to Marianna, what I wanted to tell is it's more a comment and a reaction. We've been working on literacy for young people in Argentina. We've been doing like kind of a study to see where young people are. We've seen an impressive amount of people going into digital payments from money in the last two years. But one side thing that we have seen is betting. Online betting has been like a pandemic in my country. Kids are actually saying that 30% of themselves are playing, but 80% of their friends are playing, and what they are playing is casino. I would think it was like sports. We are very much into football, as you can imagine, but there's a very like pandemic going on around how young people are using their digital. And so I'm also very interested in see if young people in your countries face similar issues and how you're dealing with those.
We should talk about that later, because Australia is about to legislate with online gambling, because we also have, I would call it a pandemic. But that is out of scope probably for this conversation. But why don't I pass to Marianna first to respond to that question on skills, and then we'll come to you, Arvind, and we'll see how we go with timing and if they kick us out.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's very, very, very on point. And unfortunately, yes, even in Europe, we have the same issue together with porn. Kids are underestimating the power of exposing themselves online and using the social media and in general, infrastructure, the digital infrastructure to expose themselves in any ways with their bodies, or on the other way, gambling and losing money. What we do is focusing a lot in a very, very early stage digital literacy. We are trying both to educate kids, but together with the adults. Okay, and even old people, like nannies or granddads and grandmom, etc., together, because especially in underrepresented communities, the let's say the dream of gaining money in a very easy way, it's really powerful, let's say. So they tend to, be scammed, or we all know that gambling is not a win situation, so that's why. So what we try to do with All Digital is collaboration. So collaborating with any kind of stakeholders on a public level, EU level, national, and even very local level in communities. We have worked also in India and Colombia with very underrepresented communities or Iraq with women to try to let them focus the teaching and learning since an early stage together in the families, a very local level, in the communities. And sometimes we struggle with religious beliefs, or, you know, in the communities, in the tribes sometimes, because, you know, it's beautiful here, we're modern and technological and everything, but we also have to deal with, and in Argentina, you know that. So that's what we're trying to do, collaborating, like in trying to involve. That's why I said we have to fund and we have to put money in literacy, not just in the infrastructure, you know, but in literacy too. Yeah, I hope I answered to your question.
Thanks, Marianna. I've been told that we actually do need to answer the gambling question by Arvind over here. I think it's a really good thing that you mentioned it. Cool.
So can I give 3 comments on, even on online betting? It's underage kids, which is a big challenge also. And one solution we are underage, yes. So we are trying to use DPIs for KYC, know your customer, which is a DPI in India, to from a sub policy level enforce that at least underage kids cannot participate in this so-called betting / gambling. So, and again, you need public infrastructure to do that, digital infrastructure to do that. On the question of AI, and I think that's a very important thing, India has now understood the benefits of digital public infrastructure. So when it comes to AI, why not? Of course. But the core of AI, and you correctly identified, is 2 things. While we believe the innovation and the entrepreneurship will come from the startups in building their own innovative algorithms and their own machine learning tools, but there are 2 elements to it. One is the compute that you mentioned. So India is putting up its own compute infrastructure as part of India's AI mission. And that's a shared compute infrastructure. So we're putting GPUs for, it's a very simple thing for others who don't get it. It's a shared computing. You would like have Google credits and AWS credits. So if you are a registered startup in AI, you will get credits to run your algorithms on that. And that's one part. The second part is data. And as everybody understands, AI is important, but data is the core of AI. So in India, the approach to data is twofold. Number one, open data. Put a lot of data open, non-personal information open. That's part of our architecture. And second is, as a consumer, as a data owner, I now have this, Erin will understand this, it's a DEPA. We call it Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. We allow people to give out, for example, a bank wants to give me credit. I can share my data with a bank A. They can use my data for a limited time with public data sets also as a reference, and then give me a factoring solution and give me credit, maybe on a better rate. And so we have 2 forms of helping AI: access to data, access to personal data, open data and personal data, but limited access. So they can't keep my data forever, because if the other bank wants to give me, they can't share that data. So a big tech company cannot share my data with their affiliates, for example. And then the second part is the compute part that we do. So that's the question on DPI. So DPI is really taking India by storm. We are now building DPIs for digital commerce, for health, for identity, KYC, you name it, we have it. For travel, we have it. For those of us who come from India, we just scan our face and we check into the airlines. So it's everywhere. Last question I had, at least for me, was targeting welfare from Argentina. I think that's the reason the government embraced it. How can you? And I'll give one simple example. Earlier, there was no way of checking my eligibility. Okay, so you could just check box on a paper. I'm, let's say, a scholarship meant for girl childs. A person would identify and say, it's, even though it was gender identified as a man, but all the corrupt official had to do was say female, and they would get a scholarship. There was no other check. Now it is in your identity whether you are a identified as a male, female, or whatever else it could be, you cannot avail a scholarship meant for women just because you connive with a corrupt official. Or if you are paying income taxation at the highest rate, you're not going to get a gas subsidy, cooking gas subsidy. There were people doing that, by the way. There was a person who I can't identify, was a billionaire, was availing 12 gas connections at subsidized rates. So, that's targeting. Yeah. So just an example.
Thanks, Arvind. I think that I'm going to get in trouble if I go any further over because there might be another session in this room after us. I'm getting nods from the back there. I think it might also be yours, Charlotte. Yeah. Okay, but I just want to thank our panel. We had nowhere near enough time and so many areas to cover. I'm not going to be surprised if in the future we actually have conferences that are on DPI. And there will be different sessions on each of these different topics if anyone in the room from ORF is listening. But I really do think that's the way this is going. It's gone from a sideline conversation on the digital economy or digital technology to absolutely a central topic that we need to be talking about. So thank you all. I encourage everyone here to come and talk to everyone on the panel to continue these conversations. And apologies if we didn't get to your questions and we didn't get to make more of your points as well. But thank you very much for being here. And thank you, ORF, and thank you to the MFA here as well.